Welcome to another episode of This Was Supposed to Be Easy.
We've had these conversations on at least 1,000 car rides and thought it might be time for other people to join us. This is Cheryl.
And my name's Amy. Hi, Cheryl. So I have been having some thoughts and I thought I could bring them here to the podcast.
Lay them on me.
All right. I think that they're interesting. And so it's one of those little things that keeps running through my head, right? And has shown up in a couple of different spots within my life. So I was watching TikTok the other day, of course, just scrolling through, and there was one about women in their 40s being more confident. And as you know, I'm kind of in that midpoint of 40s now. And I was thinking about, yes, how much more confident I am from being even in my 30s, especially from when I was in my 20s and I was apologizing for everything and all of that. And in my mid 40s now, I am definitely more confident. However, over the course of the last few months, as I've taken up doing some new things, I've talked a little bit about going back to school, even doing the podcast, a couple of other things that I've been new at. I have realized that my confidence has kind of been shaken a little bit. And as
Okay.
I usually say, I'm a pretty confident person. I would say I am not confident in every aspect of my life anymore. And it's kind of been weird.
So are you thinking that because of the new things, you're less confident in those things in particular or just in general?
I think a little bit in general-esque and in
Okay.
general
Okay.
adjacent.
Okay.
I would say if I kind of compartmentalize the aspects of my life and think about where I tend to be the most confident, in some of the most confident areas, I'm still pretty confident. But in the areas that maybe I was confident and had days that I questioned myself, I'm noticing there's more days that I'm questioning myself and they kind of spill over into some of those other areas.
I see. So it's not like you've arrived and now you're the confident 40, whatever year old, but you're realizing because it builds, some areas are more confident, but you're also a person who's open to curiosity, as we've talked about a lot. And you're willing to not stay stuck in this place where you're super comfortable, but to stretch yourself. And the result of that is that you have new areas of confidence to build.
Yes. Yes. I think that that is a good way to put it. And so I kind of brought it to the podcast to wonder if any of our listeners are also having questions about their own confidence levels. And that might be from a listener that's in their 20s to a listener that's in their 60s, 70s. Like, where do you find you get your confidence from? And do you always feel a high level of confidence? Or are there times within your life where you think you've got it together and then you're like, nope, I don't feel confident about any decision that I'm making right now, or I feel confident in certain areas but not others. And so what do our listeners kind of think about that? So I thought
Right.
if we had a conversation today, maybe we could help those that are thinking about it too.
Yeah, I love that. And I literally want to say right now, let's put that out there. Who is listening and might be willing to at least give us a ballpark of what their age is and let us know at this age, whether it's 22 or 29 or 35, like where do you feel confident right now? And what is an area where very recently you were feeling less confident? I would love to see some of that information shared and a conversation around it continue.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be really cool. I'm going to tell you that we've talked a lot also about our identity and when there's changes that happen, how that can impact our identity. And sometimes I feel very confident in my professional identity, but again, because of maybe new roles that I've taken on, I am a little more hesitant in some places. And so it's funny because last week there was an email that went out inside of our department at work and it said that a reporter from the Detroit Free Press wanted to speak with someone who was teaching inside of one of our earliest certification programs, the birth to kindergarten and early childhood special education program. And so this email went out saying, who's willing to talk to the reporter? It's been crickets. I mean,
Really?
finally today, the department chair emailed the rest of us and said, will somebody please say that they'll talk to the reporter? And I was like, I hate that more than anything, which
Hmm.
I think might be speaking to a confidence point, or it maybe could be a piece of my personality. I'm not sure. Like, I love being in a group and having someone ask us questions because amongst the collective, I'm sure one of us can answer enough of the questions, right? That,
Mhm.
that everything is taken care of. But when it's one on one, and maybe also because there's that fear of how will my answer be interpreted, right? Will it come out of my
Mm,
mouth right enough the first time that it lands in print in a way that I'm okay with, right?
right.
But finally, I looked at the email from the department chair and I'm like, ugh, I've been in the department the longest. I literally helped write these standards for the state and teach in this program, coordinate the online version of this program. And I'm the president of our state association of, early childhood educators. I probably should raise my hand. And,
Maybe. Yeah.
I literally replied with, ugh, I guess I'm the one that needs to do this. But as we talk about confidence and you bring that up, I'm thinking there could be a confidence issue with this.
Right. And I think of you as such a confident person, and you get up in front of rooms of 1,000 people, 2,000 people, and talk without a problem in the world. So
You're right.
I think that, like, yes, I'm
But don't give
surprised to
me the
even hear you say that.
one-on-one. Don't give me the one-on-one where it could land in print somewhere and I don't get to proofread it first.
Right. Yeah, that proofreading part is definitely, oh, yes. Okay, I can understand it. I can
Right. But
definitely
I think
understand.
in everything that you said, it does sort of speak to that myth that we're just growing along this line, this linear pathway. There's always some sort of circle or infinity loop or whatever it might be that keeps stretching us and keeps us on our toes in terms of needing to continuously build our confidence.
Right. We never hit that ending point that we're done growing. And I think it's also important, I had mentioned feeling not as confident in certain areas of my life and feeling like it's spilling over into others. And, I've seen that multiple times where I'll see somebody who can walk into a boardroom and like command it. They have such a presence, but then they are so not confident in their romantic life. Or you have somebody who is really confident in their parenting journey or who they are as a parent, but feel really uncomfortable going into a work environment or a profession. And so I think that it's important and maybe a little helpful to kind of identify where it is you're not feeling confident and maybe what, I often talks about curious. You even mentioned that earlier, but that idea of why am I not? So what's going on? What questions do I need to ask myself that, like, why am I having these feelings of not being confident in something?
Mhm, mhm. And I don't even know where this goes along the thought process, but maybe sometimes there's also a trust. Do you trust the people you're with?
Mhm.
And could that even impact the confidence? But probably we should dig into then, what confidence is. What does it look like or feel like to me? Or what does it look like or feel like to you or any other person? Because that likely looks and feels different.
Right. I remember watching 80s movies. I loved all the Breakfast Club type movies and that Brat Pack kind of, and I was a kid watching them. And I always remember watching certain individuals on those movies that seemed to have such charisma and such confidence. And they would walk into a room with such a demanding personality, almost kind of loud. And I've realized now as an adult that confidence doesn't have to be loud. In fact, often the loudest ones in the room are some of the least confident people there. And so I think that confidence can have a real like quietness
Mhm.
and an ability to just be in a way that they don't feel like somebody who's confident doesn't feel like they need to talk to be heard or take up space. They don't feel the need to have to jump in and answer every question. In fact, a lot of times I think somebody who's really confident in their area says things with the fewest words because they're not trying to always over explain it because they feel like, hey, I'm saying it and I'm saying it in a way that I know. And this is the way that it is.
You're you're reminding me of a few people I've worked with over the course of time where they're quiet enough in their steadiness that when they do speak up, you better listen because you know that it is going to be important or at least well thought out before it comes to the table, I
Yes.
guess.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And I love the idea that being curious, stepping into new things where you might feel less confident really is likely because you're nervous about it or a little fearful because you just don't know it as well as other areas of your life or things that you've done. It's not that there's an absence of fear, right? It's you being willing to step into the fear anyway and try this new thing that pushes you, stretches your boundaries a little bit. That I don't know, willingness to be uncomfortable.
Right. And I think that willingness to be uncomfortable is so important. We can learn so much from that. And I think also admitting what we don't know, there's a level of confidence within that, that not needing to figure everything out, but you know how to ask questions, you know how to admit when you don't know something, and you're able to also know that confidence will come and that there are certain areas of your life you might feel confident, but I think there's some things that we can do to help build confidence in the meantime.
I'm all about
Uh,
strategies.
yes, on those days that we don't feel like we have it all together.
Yeah, or even inside of those topics or I don't know, areas of life that we don't feel as confident in, right? So,
Right.
I'm gonna tip my computer screen down and show you the shirt that I'm wearing right now. And I don't know if you can even read backwards, but I recently bought myself a few shirts that have some statements on them that I would like to wear. And you and I talk often about how there are certain things we find it easier to just maybe be a little more silent about. Like we don't have to throw it out there to everybody everywhere. And I'm gonna go grocery shopping today. And I'm like, do I wear this shirt out of my house? Or and if I do, are there people who are gonna feel like it's okay to comment on my attire and what thoughts might be behind it? And so I'm sort of prepping myself mentally, if I decide if I decide to be brave today, right? Like, is there something I can at least be ready to use as a response if there's any sort of little microaggression that happens against me? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and it's a very cool shirt. I could read it. Yes, it was very cool. No, I see that. Yes, we have talked oftentimes about not necessarily putting every thought we have out there on display, even though you and I both talk in kind of every area of our life for a living. But sometimes we don't always. I think you and I have both held positions that have required us to be a little more neutral. And so we always consider the thoughts of everyone. And so
Mhm.
sometimes, though, when we take a stand on something or we have a thought on something that is solely us, is 100%, it's who we are, it's who we believe we are, it's how we believe the world should be. It's personal though. Like it's personal when we are taking that stand. And so by opening up that, I think one thing that kind of goes along with being confident is saying, "Oh, you thought this was a back and forth, and it's not. This is me. This is my thought. I'm wearing it. I'm whatever, and that's all that needs to happen." And so that confidence is knowing yourself well enough to be like, "Oh no, this isn't a back and forth. I don't need that comment or just a simple thank you, and keep going, keep
Yeah.
going about your day."
Yeah.
I think that there is something about that.
Yeah. I sort of just feel like it might just be a little micro step of, yeah, this is who I am. I don't need to shout and scream, you know, but I should be okay to take this little micro step and wear a statement that I feel is important and celebrate that bravery a little bit, just this tiny little step for me.
Yes, and absolutely celebrate
Don't
it.
you all be texting me and saying, "What is your shirt?"
You know you're gonna end up having to post a picture of you in the shirt now at some point. I'm sure people are, "What is it? What is it?" I do think though that, we talk about microaggression. I've also, in line with that, heard kind of a trend, again, TikTok, take it for what it is, but micro feministic moments, like those micro shows of feminism, like one that I loved was always referring to doctors as women, and that it's like little pieces out there that we have been kind of conditioned to think about it in a certain way. So we're pushing up against it. And I often talk about micro learning, little pieces of learning that happen, in 30-second moments.
Yes.
But I think that also goes to think about micro wins. Like, I talk about this confidence thing where, so here's one area that I've been feeling frustrated. I spend a lot of time looking at myself in a camera. I'm on a lot of meetings at work. We record the podcast. I have classes in the evening. I am probably on a Zoom camera somewhat times upwards of 8 hours a day.
It's a lot of
I
time to look at yourself.
It is a lot of time, and I have been noticing more of my flaws and leaning into the insecurities of how I look versus celebrating or saying like, "Oh, your hair looks really nice today," or talking nice to myself about it.
Yeah.
It's like, "Oh, my face feels too round," or "My roots feel like they're showing," or all of these little things that I normally don't care about. And I should probably just go and hit the button on the Zoom, so I can't see my face anymore. And that would probably be for the best, but then I'd be paranoid about, well, what are people seeing? But it's those things. So I feel like if I can take little moments to be like, "Hey, you know what? Yes, I was on camera for 8 hours today, and I'm gonna tell myself 3 nice things every hour that I notice about myself." Like those little wins to say like, "Okay, instead of picking apart every negative thing, what are the nice things, those little micro things that I can give myself kind of almost micro comments or micro
Mhm.
compliments
Yeah.
throughout the way to say like, no, this is it."
And as you are saying that, I think about, little affirmation statements. What are those affirmation statements that you can repeat out loud, but to yourself on a very regular basis as a way to combat some of that. But also, and when I say combat, I guess what I'm thinking about is we do a lot of negative self talk.
Yeah.
And I say we, I don't even know who the we is, right? But you hear it all the time. And there are so many times when I've been more aware of that. And, why did I just say that to myself? Why did I just call myself stupid? Or why did I just speak to myself internally in a way that I would never speak to a friend? And when I'm aware of it and I can catch it, it stays at the top, right? My self talk matters. Your self talk matters. The things we say to ourselves matter. And we should be treating ourselves like we're treating and talking to really good friends. We don't deserve that negative self talk.
No, we don't. Very true.
Okay, so we're looking for strategies to build our confidence. One of the things I'm thinking about, we sort of already talked about, but I just want to say it a little more clearly, right? And that is um, doing things that are new, trying things before they're ready, that we feel totally ready for them, because those little actions move us on the pathway, whether it's straight, circular, or whatever. Taking those little steps into the unknown, into the new, do help us build our knowledge, the experience helps us build our understanding, so that the confidence will come with it, I believe.
I believe that too, and I also think not expecting perfection. Not expecting perfection on the first time, not expecting perfection on the 4th, 10th, 20th time, and that there's always something to be learned from, or I think almost in a way, if we never expect to reach perfection and we look at every situation as an opportunity for growth, then we keep growing even when other people think we've reached perfection.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, almost those little, again, to use the term micro, but micro shifts in what we're doing. Okay, so another phrase that, has really helped me, and I might have talked about this when we were talking about all things imposter, whether it be a syndrome or a phenomenon or experience or things like that, but was the why me, why not me? And so if this is a repeat story, I think it's still worth one sharing. But the why me, why not me kind of thought is that when it comes to fear, shame, self-doubt, and you want to, yell at the world, why me? You can change it to why not me? Why wouldn't I experience all of those things? So even as I'm saying, like, I'm feeling less confident, why wouldn't I? But you can also turn it on when you're saying, like, oh, I want to get my doctorate. I want to apply for a new job. I want to, I'm never going to meet somebody. Change all of those phrasings to why not me? Why wouldn't I get the new job? Why wouldn't I go to back to school? Why wouldn't I get to meet somebody in my life? And I remember a situation I was happened a few years back with my daughter. She was talking about really kind of wanting an elite job within her field.
Yeah.
And she was telling her then roommate at the time, I think I really want to work for a professional sports team. She's going into athletic training, and she was talking about wanting to do that. And the person she was talking to said, like, you should probably just plan on working in a high school. That's what most people do. Why would you, why do you think you would get to do that? Everybody wants those jobs.
Mhm.
And, like I told my daughter at the time, why not you? And in no way is it going to be easy. In no way is it going to just be handed to you. But if it's something you want, then make the moves to get it. So if you have the biggest goal or the biggest dream out there and you say, oh, well, you know, why not you? If your dream is to be an actor and actress, why is that
Yeah.
impossible?
Yeah.
People do it all the time.
Yeah. Don't
You
shut the
know,
door before you ever actually turn the handle.
Right, exactly. And, I think that those are phrasings that even those little shifts in the way that we think about things can be so important. So anytime like, and I mean, again, very rarely do I even think like, oh, this bad thing happened. Why did this happen? Now I think about, okay, it probably happened for a reason that I'm supposed to learn something from. What can I learn from it? Because bad stuff, or other words, bad stuff is going to happen. And I'm not so amazing that it's not going to happen to me too. But also in the same sense, good things are going to happen in the world. And I'm also not beyond good things happening too.
Right, right, right. You're not gonna get it if you take yourself out of the running for it right at the beginning, right? Like,
Right.
you're already disqualifying yourself. Don't do that. Advocate for yourself. And I love, like, when you were talking about your daughter, one of my own daughter's stories hit me, right? Like, we've both talked about how she literally picked her major in college so that she could spend this amazing life attending as many Broadway shows as possible,
Right.
right? You
Right.
know, and that in her mind involved living in New York City, living in Manhattan.
Mhm.
And so that was what she was pursuing. And when the recruiters came to college to talk to the people in the program, she made sure to talk to the person from the international accounting firm that she had the most interest in. And they contacted her later and offered her an internship in, I want to say, Detroit, Chicago, and some other Midwestern city. And
Okay.
she said, well, actually, I want to intern in Manhattan. And they're like, well, I don't really place the interns in Manhattan. And she's like, but that's where I want to intern.
Mhm.
And I just think so many of us would have been like, "Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'll do Detroit or whatever," And
Right.
I'm just sort of feeling this proudness over again
Mhm.
because she's like, "Well, actually, no, I want Manhattan." And the person's like, "Okay, well, I guess I can reach out to the person that places interns in Manhattan and see if they're willing to take someone from your university. They just don't usually recruit from here." And long story shorter, I guess, she did it. She got the internship in Manhattan and got to go to work every day in a building that was right in Times Square. And later on, while not in that same awesome exact location, she was placed in the firm office in Manhattan.
Mhm.
And it wouldn't have happened if she had shut the door and disqualified herself before advocating at least a little bit. It doesn't mean the door always opens wide up for you, but at least try.
Yeah, trying,
Yeah.
I think is really important. And, it makes me also think about, we mentioned that curiosity, and I know I go back to that, but even that story makes me think of her own curiosity in trying. Well,
Mhm.
what happens if I say, no, I'd really like to be placed in Manhattan? At that point, the worst thing they can do is come back and be like, well, sorry, we only have Detroit or Chicago. I can't move you there. I can't get
Yeah.
you anywhere else. And if that's the case, then maybe she looks at a different internship,
Right.
or
Right.
she takes this one until something else comes along, if that's something. But then you also open yourself up for the opportunity of, this is not the end.
Yeah.
I can be curious and say, like, well, what if I try?
Yeah. I think curiosity might be one of our theme words, Amy, because it does keep popping up in so many different ways as we talk about things, right? Like, as you think about curiosity and trying new things, it reminds me of my tendency to want to make something perfect before I put it out there. If I'm designing a course or anything, I'm like, oh, it's not perfect yet. But there's such a value to being curious enough that you don't wait for the perfect to show up and that it's okay to be seen as you're growing. And all you need to do is get started, right? You don't have to know everything on day one. You don't have to know everything at the beginning. You just need to begin and trust that you'll figure things out as you go.
I know I recently built, so within my day job, I build a series of courses, and I just kind of wrapped up the second level. And it was all material that I had pulled from and I had asked people to help me with, and had to admit that I'm not an expert in each one of these areas. And so I found people in my own circles who are experts, and leaned in and asked if they could help, and they did. And I then asked for feedback today, actually, this whole week. So I asked the individuals that had participated in the training, what are the great things? What are you walking away from? But more importantly, what are the things that left you wanting still? What are the areas that you wish we either dug in a little deeper, we covered this topic instead of this one, it was given to you in a way that made more sense than the way it was given. And I have realized that asking for feedback, and I know we've talked about that in other areas too, but asking for feedback is so helpful in building your confidence, because one thing I realized for myself is that if, let's say, I'm not feeling confident about something and I'm so like this course, I was looking at it going like, I don't know how happy I was with it. And the majority of the people said, I really liked it. I liked being a part of it. I felt like I grew a lot. And the feedback that I got on the tweaks, those were things that I already wanted to change or I thought about too. And it confirmed that, like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. It confirmed that the changes that I wanted to make, or the things that I was already thinking about, were a better idea for something else. And then a few people suggested a few different things that I hadn't even considered. And it's freeing to not be expected, I think, to know it all,
Mhm.
in that, by asking the questions, not being afraid of hearing the responses, but knowing that the question is the opportunity for you to continue to morph into something even better. And when we're in that active process of morphing, that's where the confidence really comes to. When we can say with confidence, I like me, I like my thoughts, I like who I am. I like that my body can do these things for me. I like that my brain works in this way. Then I think those are all steps that work into our confidence. And I think too, like, we can never, I would love to say don't care what other people think, but I don't know if that is even 100% obtainable in every area of our life, right?
Right, it
Like, I
can
mean,
cut.
realistically, I could say that's what we should strive for. And people would be like, no, that's never going to happen. But I think even just caring what we think more than what other people think. So
Mhm.
not caring what other people think, but we care more about it. We care more about, did we try the thing? We care more, did we ask for the feedback? We care more that we, liked how we showed up to that meeting. And I think also one other kind of technical piece is education. If you are not feeling like you know something, read a book, ask somebody who does know, go online and find a
Say
video
it.
explaining it to you.
Say it. Just say, "Watch a
Watch a TikTok, a
TED
TED Talk, a
TED
master
Talk."
class. TED Talk, yes. Yep. I recently think I took in probably about 10 of those this week as I was building out a training, and I'm like, I need to know more and more about this.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think all of those things, go to the people who you think have an expertise and figure out what they're saying in an educational way for yourself. So if
Yeah, and
people are having the conversations, then you get to kind of be a part in your own head.
right, right, and you know that one of the things I admire so, so much about you is your ability that you also have grown, right? But your ability to ask questions, and your questions often are to educate yourself,
Right.
but they're also often to learn about others, which I guess is still educating yourself, but they're also often intended to help someone else grow. And I just think the more that we can step into being okay with showing the world that we're a seeker, that we're still learning, we're also showing people that it's okay, that they don't have to be perfect too, right? That it offers sort of a safety for others to also try something new, to also fail forward, to also ask a question, which might be admitting they don't know everything, right? So as we do it, it sort of spreads, right? I think just asking questions shows a certain kind of confidence that helps others build their confidence in a contagious way, I think.
Well, thank you for saying that. And I believe oftentimes I've said, like, I think like my whole purpose, and again, I also think purpose in life isn't something that we necessarily find, but something we create. And so I have created my purpose of having people have a better life or think differently about something because of something maybe I said or did or helped them think of in a different way. And so feeling like asking questions in a way feels like so natural of a way to do that.
Mhm.
But there's also often times that I think like, is that question, people don't always want to answer questions and people don't always, but if somebody really is resistant, I think about answering a question, even to like, I'll say, hey, have you thought about it this way? And you don't have to give me an answer, but as you're thinking about it, have you done da 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 da? And when somebody really pushes back on having to face a question, I think like, okay, that's the place to dig in.
Yeah.
That's the place that you need to kind of go to help build up your confidence or help build up your area of education or your area of knowledge. Or because if you're scared of a question, then you probably need to push into that a little bit and kind of figure out what that means.
Yeah. Yeah. You're making me think back to the reporter scenario, right? Like if I get asked a question and I become nervous about not knowing enough, give a coherent answer, instead of bumbling along and then being mortified when I read what that ends up being in
Hmm.
print, why wouldn't I just say, I'm not sure about that one?
Yeah.
I can say that.
Absolutely.
It's
And you
it's
always have
power.
the option, I think, too, to say, you know what, I don't know enough on that topic to talk about it, but if you want, I'll figure it out and I'll put it in an email and get you that answer, from
Yeah.
somebody who does know something.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, I think you're going to do great at that interview. That's what I'm thinking.
Oh, don't make my stomach hurt.
You're be confident. You're going to do amazing. And you know what? Also, sometimes I feel like as we're wrapping up, one of the things that I think that we didn't talk about but is so important is if you need an extra dose of confidence for the day, put on the outfit that makes you feel confident. For me, it's usually I joke that it's blazers. I love a
You
good
do.
blazer.
You do love a
Yeah,
blazer.
I do. And so put on the outfit that you feel good in. You show confidence when you feel good in what you have on your body. So if you don't like your body that day, find something, anything that makes you feel good. And our brains take in what we through all of our senses. So do you have a song that makes you feel confident? Maybe it's a song that you know every word to or you love the beat. Put it on and put it on loud, And so
Playlist. Yeah.
if you're having feelings that aren't confident, then you blast them out with words that make you feel confident.
Yeah.
I know that you have many a Taylor Swift songs that add to that confidence level,
Yeah.
Cheryl.
Yeah. The other day we interviewed Holly
Yeah.
and Katie, and Holly was wearing a confidence dress, right?
Right.
Like she stood up and she's like, "Look at my hot pink dress."
Yes.
And then before we started, I'm like, "Hold on a second, I've got to grab my power lip gloss."
Yep.
And but you're right, it could be a song, it could be your blazer, it could be the hot pink dress or the shiny lip gloss, but just some little thing that feels like a boost
Right.
for you.
Yes, some
Yeah.
special shoes or a cool pair of earrings or, anything that makes you feel most like you over anything else.
Yeah. And so, again, you said as we wrap up, I was thinking about this quote that I heard recently, and I'm going to just steal a portion of the quote and not actually quote it. But when you think about, oh, I don't know, the scenario where the four of us were having our conversation, you, Holly, Katie, and myself, each of us could pull on a confidence booster, right? It's not about one of us being the most confident. It's about creating a space where we can all feel confident. We can all use our tools. And it's not pie. That's my quote, right? It's
Right.
not pie. It's not like if I have an extra dose of confidence today, that means there's less available for you. Right? We aren't out to do that. It's about creating a space and places where all of us can be our confident selves and none of us feel like we have to shrink so that someone else can shine. Right.
Right. And I think if you are a truly confident person, you would never ask someone else to shrink in your presence
Oh,
because
absolutely.
you're not threatened by it. You are going to enter the room in your way, no matter what, no matter
Yeah.
else of who else is in the room. And so a truly confident person isn't going to worry about being too big, but they're also not going to worry that other people in the room are too big either.
Yeah, it's not selfish, it's service. It's just it's about creating the contagious confidence, I think.
Yeah,
At least that's the piece that makes me smile, when I think about it.
me
So
too.
yeah, so as we really do tie it off,
Yeah.
um, remember that question we asked early on. We would love to hear from you. We'd love to hear about in this phase of life, where are you feeling extra confident, as well as what might be one of those newer things you're trying out where you're not fully ready yet, but you're willing to feel a little bit less confident so that you can start building more.
Yes. And if you need a cheerleader, Cheryl and I offer up our services. We
Yeah.
are the best cheerleaders you didn't know you needed in your life. So if you are being new at something and you just need somebody to tell you nice things about yourself, you go right to the socials, you go right to our website. You can put it right on Spotify, but put it in the comments and tell us what you're working on, and we will cheer you along 100%. Thanks for tuning in to This Was Supposed to Be Easy. Remember, the best stories are the ones we live.
Join us next time as we uncover more tales and thoughts that just might change your world while we navigate those things that we didn't expect to be so hard.
Stay curious, stay connected, and keep wondering.